Hello everyone, I'm Dead Knight and this is In It to Win It. Today we are going to talk about the biggest news in Hearthstone in quite some time, which is the news that Blizzard is going to be banning a card in ranked play. So this is a huge watershed moment for the game, and I am really excited about it, and I think it is the best decision that they've made for this game in a long time. Even better than giving out the core set news. This is huge. This is uh, the first sign that they have shown that they are not only a mature card game with a giant card pool, but they're willing to do the most responsible thing to keep the game healthy in every play mode. So there are some people who are outraged by this because they are paying for these cards and now they cannot use them in ranked as intended. But I think that after watching this video, hopefully this will alleviate your concerns and explain why this is such a good thing for the game. So firstly, we need to remember that banning is not new to Hearthstone. So we've seen cards banned in every play mode except for ranked play so far. So we have arena cards are banned, like quests for each class have all been banned in arena. You just don't see that because they're just not offered to you. We have cards that are banned in duels, which we know there were some problematic cards in duels that were just over the top, and those cards cannot be used anymore in duels, and it doesn't affect your ranked play in any way. So by being able to do this, they can come up with new experimental, fun, exciting game modes like duels, even though duels isn't always so fun. It's still a work in progress, but it won't affect the way that you play your ranked games. So imagine how you would feel if a card got nerfed because it was overpowered in duels and then it completely affected your ranked experience. So that would be terrible. We don't do that. So now we can get that same nuance between standard and wild. And this is important because the card pool is ever growing. So we're getting 500 cards a year right now with about 170 cards per expansion times three. So we can't always take into account every single card that was ever printed whenever we're making a new a new design for a card, because that seriously limits the design space and uh, deprives us of some of the fun cards that we're seeing. Uh, this is something that we see in other card games. What I consider the gold standard of collectible card games, which is Magic the Gathering. Nuanced bans are happening all the time. So this is more important for Magic because their cards are printed, so it's a lot harder to nerf things. But nonetheless, the fact that we can ban things in certain play modes and not others means that we have a rich gaming experience in every game mode they decide to come out with. So Magic has been around for almost 30 years, and they have not just their equivalent of Wild and Standard, but they also have game modes in between. So it would be like if we said we were going to have a game mode that was from Witchwood onward. So you could imagine Blizzard coming out with something like that, and then banning individual cards within there, like banning Baku the Moon Eater and Gang Greymane in that limited mode, but keeping it in Wild without changing your Wild experience. So this is a great precedent that allows them to open up more game modes without having to worry about how each individual card will affect the entire spectrum of the game. Now, speaking of Baku, the Moon Eater, and Gen Greymane, let's talk about how they've already done this before when they banned those two in Standard. So before they had introduced the ban terminology, they used only Hall of Fame was the only way that they could get rid of a card. So they had only done this once or twice with Ragnaros and with Sylvanas Windrunner, but they had taken cards out of the format, and I think it was a great success. When we really opened up some new designs, and we stopped seeing Sylvanas come out in every mid-range or long game deck, and it was, I think, better for the game. So when that was their only option, when Baku the Moon Eater and Gan Greymane came out, these were serious problems in standard. Every single deck was either an odd or an even deck because they were bringing such a huge advantage. And then when Blizzard was trying to adjust individual cards, they couldn't simply nerf something because it would have these wide-reaching effects on even versus odd. So, for example, Giggling Inventor, which cost 5 mana when it came out, they nerfed it into the dirt by making it cost 7 mana because they couldn't make it be an even card because then even decks would be too overpowered. So you could see how the problems of adjusting and tweaking individual cards can already start affecting other builds and other parts of the game. So what they do, they put it in the Hall of Fame so that you could keep using it in Wild, but they effectively banned it in Standard. So, and I think everybody can agree that was good for the game. We immediately saw new decks come out. We immediately saw a much richer, diverse meta, and I think everybody benefited from that. And we didn't lose these fun experimental Wild decks that people were running with these cards. Um, were they overpowered in Wild at the time? Perhaps, but uh, now we don't see too many even or odd decks in Wild anymore. We see a couple, and they're fun and they're interesting, but they don't dominate. So that instance where we banned 2 cards in Standard was the most elegant solution to open up the game, and that's really what we're going for. Is we want the nuance to be able to make the game healthy while affecting the fewest number of things. We want the most parsimonious solution to complicated problems. And we're seeing that now with allowing individual cards to be banned in certain modes. So let's let's talk about the thing that has really brought this up, which is Stealer of Souls. This guy is a 4 mana 2/6, and whenever you draw a card, it makes it cost health instead of mana. This is currently a non-factor in Standard. I haven't seen it hit the table once. I don't think anyone's running it. Um, you could imagine it being good if you, say, play Lorekeeper Polkelt on turn 5 to put all your most expensive cards to the top of the deck. Then you play this guy, life tap into Lord Jaraxxus, for example, and play that on turn 6. So you can see the potential here, but then again, the downside of that is if your most expensive cards are on the top of your deck, you only get to play 2 or 3 of them before you run out of health in Standard. In Wild, it's a totally different story. In Wild, you can immediately play Plot Twist and get a whole handful of free spells. And then once you have those spells that cost health, you can play Violet Illusionist and then play your entire hand. I've seen about 6 or 7 different win conditions with this, but it looks like the most effective is Hemet Jungle Hunter to blow up your whole deck. You play that for free because you're immune. And then you play Mecha'thun so that when there's nothing left on the board of your deck, you win the game. And then you Cataclysm, discard your whole hand, destroy your whole board, your library is already gone, and you win the game. So that's probably the most efficient way to do it. The deck can do this as quickly as turn 3 if everything works perfectly, but it's too efficient, it's too strong, and Wild is really not that fun right now because there's so many different Stealer of Souls build, and it's just a matter of who can get their combo first. So it's great that this card is still in Standard because you could see some people wanting to experiment with this. In the scenario I just described before, where you play Stealer of Souls after a Lorekeeper Polkelt, you could do some things where you play an early free Ticketus. You can play that early Lord Jaraxxus. You can play a free Sociologist Militia, and then after you clear your opponent's board, play another free card that's really expensive. So there's so many different ways that you could see this being experimented with in Standard, and it wouldn't really be that broken a deck because you'd have no life at the end of this, so you'd be very, very vulnerable. So like the design of the card is really cool, but clearly there are problems. So this nuanced change lets us keep experimenting in standard. And if someone wants to break standard too, then the beauty of this is that Blizzard can always nerf the card and change it in a different way, and then unban it in Wild, and then we get to play all over again. But we're not seeing these unintended consequences where we lose one card and then it makes another card overpowered, and then we have to change that one too, and then we have this whole cascading of changes that lead to the game falling apart. So that's not going to happen when you can just surgically ban an individual card. And like we were talking about with the other game modes, this also is a signal that we might be seeing some other game modes soon. If there are multiple different ways to play ranked games, then banning cards in individual modes is the most effective thing. So we don't have all those cascading effects in each individual mode. So I'm really excited about the direction of the game. This signals the maturity of Hearthstone. It tells us that we're going to be getting a long line of cards coming out every year. So we have a very fun and ever-changing standard meta, and we don't have to worry about Wild going totally off the rails. We know that Wild is going to have some crazy combos, and that's okay. But now we can address those crazy combos and keep Wild healthy without ruining our favorite cards in Standard. And that's an exciting thing. It makes me, as someone who hits Legend and Standard and Wild every season, it makes me happy to see that they care about both game modes and not just letting Wild get overgrown with overpowered cards. So nothing could be better. This is the absolute best way to handle this problematic card, and I'm very excited to see what comes next. So, do you think that anything else should be on the chopping block right now? What cards are you looking at that you think should be banned in Wild? What do you think of the great banning of 2021? Leave some respectful comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and tune in next time.